Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and I would like to start this video with an apology because obviously everyone is struggling to actually buy a 30 series card, and that may be because I have them all with me here in the studio. I've got 6 ASUS 30 series cards. They've got the TUF and the STRIX, 3070, 3080 and 3090. I've also got a couple of the FE versions as well. So as you can probably tell, this is gonna be a pretty big roundup and buying guide video. This is the best part of like 6 grand's worth of graphics cards. Unfortunately, these are all being collected tomorrow, which is kind of sad. I'm getting quite attached to them, but obviously these are just review samples, and hopefully the stock issues will improve. But a big thank you to ASUS for sponsoring this video. But of course, as always, all opinions, all tests and conclusions are my own. So all these are the OC editions of ASUS's cards, obviously which come with a factory overclock if you want the best performance possible. But for a small saving, you can also get the non-OC versions, which still comes with the better fan, the better cooling, if you maybe want to overclock it yourself or not that bothered and just want the cooler temperatures. So first question, what exactly are the main benefits of going with something like an ASUS or third-party card rather than a Founders Edition version? So versus the FE, the TUF OC versions of the cards get a boost to core clock speed. They also get a little bit of RGB, although not as much as the STRIX. We have much better cooling and also quieter fans. We also get an extra HDMI 2.1 port, which is quite nice because you only get one on the FE version. And we also get higher power limits, so you can potentially overclock these a little bit further than you would be able to with the FE. However, the ROG STRIX and STRIX OC versions take it to the next level. With slightly higher clock speeds, improved heatsink and fans, there's more go faster RGB lighting on this, and overall it's just a bit more of a premium design. Plus you get dual BIOS modes with this for switching between performance profiles. And finally, the power limit is a little bit higher on the STRIX versus the TUF, and while I don't have the exact info on this, higher end models tend to get higher binned, which basically means slightly better performing versions of the cards. One more thing to consider is, unlike the Founders cards, which get Nvidia's new 12-pin power connector, which you have to use an adapter with, the ASUS cards here use regular 8-pin connectors, or actually 3 of them on the STRIX 3080 and 3090. So we'll get into the all-important gaming performance in just a second, but first I want to sort of look at how these compare in terms of acoustics and thermals. Do these fans really make much of a difference? Well, compared to the new push-through fan design we get on the Founders models, these ASUS cards have gone down the more traditional 3 fans and a massive heatsink route. And actually, each TUF card here has pretty much the same dimensions from the 3070 all the way up to the 3090, and it's the same case with the slightly larger STRIX cards. So they are all a fair bit bigger than the Founders Edition models, especially when you compare the little 3070 FE versus the STRIX version. So the idea is the larger heatsink and the more robust sort of cooling fan system we have on here helps to dissipate heat better on the card, so it runs cooler, the fans don't have to spin as fast, and so it actually means that the card can maintain the sort of top performance for longer without any or with only minimal throttling. So as usual, I test my GPUs in an actual PC rather than a test bench, so thermals are more realistic. And starting with the 3080 in my sustained heavy load test, which runs TimeSpy and Aftermarket at the same time for around 20 minutes, my FE version hits 74 Celsius, while the TUF and the STRIX models hit 64 and 67 degrees Celsius respectively, with the latter likely being higher due to the higher out-of-the-box OC and also the much higher power limit. Idle temperatures were also lower too. So I actually didn't see much in the way of throttling on any 3080, but the Founders was a lot noisier at 54 decibels, thanks to the fans hitting a max of 3800 RPM, compared to just over 2000 RPM on the TUF and the STRIX cards, which meant they were noticeably quieter, especially the TUF. On the 3070, I saw similar drops in load and idle temperatures, and while the Founders 3070 throttled back by around 250 MHz in sustained heavy use, the ASUS cards were able to maintain their slightly higher clock speeds. Now, to its credit, the Founders 3070 is already a pretty quiet card to begin with, and I didn't see any real improvements in acoustics using either of the ASUS cards. And that highlights one important difference. The 3080 here can draw anything from 320 to 370 watts of power, so there's a lot more heat to dissipate, whereas the 3070 is anything between 220 and 280 watts, which means the fans don't need to speed up as much or as often as the higher power 3080 and 3090, so you're really not getting as much of an acoustic improvement on the less powerful 3070 cards as you are from its bigger brothers. As for the 3090, while I unfortunately don't have a Founders Edition to compare them with, both the TUF and the STRIX models are some of the quietest here, and load temperatures are similar to what I saw on the STRIX 3070 and the 3080, which is impressive, though we do get slightly lower clock speeds with this. Alright, let's get to the good bit. Let's talk about gaming performance. And I want to find out, since the 3070 here is probably going to be the most popular card, it is of course the cheapest of all of them, how this compares to the 3080 and the 3090, starting with all just the TUF OC versions. Starting at 1080p, and the games don't really justify the price increase, but at 1440p, the 3080 TUF was about 20% faster than the 3070 TUF. But as you would expect, it's at 4K where the TUF 3080 and the TUF 3090 really shine, being 36 and 51% faster than the TUF 3070 respectively. And I got similar results in my synthetic tests. So I think playing at 4K justifies the extra cost of the 3080, but maybe not the 3090, which is 3 times the price of the 3070. But the next question is, how do the TUF and the STRIX cards compare with their respective Founders Editions? Again, with average results, and things aren't exactly as compelling. The TUF is on average 3% faster at all 3 resolutions, while the STRIX is 6% faster at Full HD and 4K, but 5% faster at 1440. Moving on to the 3080, and at 1080p, the TUF and STRIX is between 2 and 4% faster respectively, and it's a similar story at 1440, while at 4K we're looking at a 4% higher average frame rate for the TUF and a whopping 9% for the STRIX. Now, since I don't have a 3090 FE with me here, I'll compare the OC 3090 TUF and STRIX, and overall between these guys there's only a 1 to 3% difference across the resolutions. So what would I buy? Well, I haven't had a chance to test other third-party cards yet, although generally ASUS is pretty competitive and these TUF and STRIX are some of the best third-party cards you can buy. But of course, you are paying a premium for these third-party cards over the Founders, but that's always the case. But is it worth it? Well, the performance optic out of the box isn't anything mind-blowing, but that's not where the value lies. In this case, it's the acoustics, the lower temperatures, and also its ability to maintain clock speeds for longer that is the real value of going for one of these cards. And of course, if you do want to do more overclocking yourself, it'll be much better with these third-party cards which have higher power limits. Again, the STRIX is the best for that, although we have seen that generally the OC headroom with these 30 series cards isn't that much. Of all the cards here, if I were to buy one myself, I would probably go with the RTX 3080, and that's because I play at 3840 by 1600, which is almost 4K. It's a not that one, but an ultra wide usually. And we did see a bigger benefit with the cooling and the acoustics on the 3080 and the 90 rather than the 70 because it's just got a lower power draw. But if you're playing at 1440 or maybe high refresh 1080p, then I think the 3070 is your best bet. And if I had to buy one, I would probably, honestly, sorry ASUS, I'd probably go with the FE version just because it's so much smaller. And as I say, you don't see quite as big a gain in terms of the acoustics as you do with the higher end cards. So I think for the compact size as well, and also the slightly lower price, this is probably the one I would personally go for. But if you're after a 3080 or 90, then I would go with one of the third-party cards. But if you want the absolute best of the best, or as I say, use other software that can take advantage of the extra GPU and VRAM, then the 3090 could be worth it. And if you're going to pay £1,400 anyway for a Founders Edition card, then you may as well pay that little bit extra and go for one of these guys with the overclock and that all-important better cooling. The elephant in the room though, of course, is that these are all NVIDIA cards, and we're gonna have to wait and see how these stack up with AMD's new RX 6000 series cards. I can't wait to get those in and test them properly and see how they compare to these in terms of performance and of course the all-important value for money. Just as a bit of a personal footnote, I feel incredibly privileged that I have these cards with me to test. As I say, I can't keep them, which is a bit sad, but throughout my teenage and adult life, I've always wanted to have, the latest or the best graphics cards. So this setup for me is so ridiculous and over the top, but yeah, incredibly awesome as well. So thank you ASUS for sending them over, also NVIDIA for the FE models. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you do want to see more from me, then don't forget to hit that little subscribe button below, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.